I'm extremely happy today to host Sarah Durieux. Sarah is not just an amazing activist, organizer, writer. She's also one of my favorite people in the world. And I'm just happy that in the time of the craziest campaign, we have some opportunity to actually talk for a couple of minutes. You're listening to the Conversations Bread and Roses, conversations about resilience, hope, and reproductive rights. And in these conversations, I'm speaking with different women who are helping with the campaign My Voice, My Choice, a campaign where we are trying to collect 1 million signatures throughout all Europe for safe and accessible abortion. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Nika. How are you?
Yeah, I am like in a campaign mode. So just trying to figure out what else we can do and what is not done. But actually, like I wanted to start conversation with you a little bit different. And I wanted to say that like this campaign wouldn't exist without you because it was a crazy idea. I think at like 3 a.m. in New York while like eating pizza after being out. Do you want to explain to people how we came to this idea and why actually this campaign exists?
Well, I think it was, yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the exact context because, as you say, it was late. But I think what brought us together in the past, and since we met, make us feel like we align on our values, is to say we need to bring people together, and bringing people together is also important in political work. I think very often the problem we have is that we want to do politics and we want this to be, very top down. We want a few guys, very often guys, to come up with the great ideas and then to push it forward. And I think you and I have the same vision that politics is about the people. It's about bringing groups of people together, a majority of people together as well, and being able to get people to join an action wherever they come from, and across, the different visions of the world. But I think that the idea really came because we talked about ECI, this mechanism, and you've been doing a lot of work in Slovenia using like the institutional entry point we have into politics, and the referendum system in Slovenia was a way for you to get a lot of things in motion, including like protecting the access to water, protecting the independence of media. And I don't know if I remember well, but I think you didn't know about the ECI, the ECI mechanism, and we started talking about the ECI and what a great tool we could use to push things forward for a better Europe, for Europe, for everyone to thrive, for everyone to be free. And you got very excited about this because you love gathering signature and you're pretty good at it. So we started to talk about this and how we could use that. And I think very, very quickly we talked about the question of abortion being like one of the defining the defining question of our time, both because it talks about health and it talks about living healthy lives, but it also talks about, freedom and basic rights and human rights. And we think that's something that brings people together, and that we've been able to win a lot of things on this issue. So that's why we needed to get on this.
Yes, and at the time that we were like spending time in US, also something else came up, like in US, which was the decision made by the Constitutional Court to basically take away the right for abortion from the millions of people in US. And it was like a dark period. I remember that like I felt like living there at that time that I cannot do anything, that I don't know like what to hold on. Like, and you said like every single time that something bad happened, it's also an opportunity to change something and do something good. And you actually did something.
Yeah, I mean, it was about the same time, and it was just after our conversation, I think. I like, first of all, that you talk about crisis and opportunities. I think that's one of the things I'm doing a lot of support for groups to do effective campaigning. And I think like what makes good campaign is the ability to use crisis and all the attack against our rights and our freedoms to actually get things in motion. So at the same time that we were talking about this potential ECI, we in France started a campaign to try and get the abortion rights into the constitution. And it's very funny because I used to work at change.org, the petition platform, but my role there was really to support people to get their campaign forward. So always being in the back, always pushing them, supporting them, but trying to make them push their own agenda. And for the first time, I had left Change for a year, I think. And for the first time, I was like, maybe I'm going to start my own campaign. So when Roe versus Wade happened, I contacted Sarah Durieux, who is the president of the Planning Familial in France. It's kind of the equivalent of Planned Parenthood in France. And I was like, this is the moment, this is now. Because what was happening is that while in the US this was being decided, in France we heard a lot of different political leaders from all of the political spectrum saying how bad it was, how dangerous it was, that it was unacceptable. But while they were saying that, the access to abortion in France and the right of abortion in France were being attacked, and even though France has the right of abortion in its laws, it was day after day becoming more difficult for many women to get access to abortion. And one of the very long fights that feminists have been fighting in France is to try and get, abortion in the constitution. But it was never really pursued because it's very complicated to change the constitution. And for many people, rightfully so, for many activists, feminist activists, this was such a hard battle and very difficult to win. So it was never taken as far as we wish it would have gone. And so it really felt it was the moment, because when you have such a when you have such an united voice on all of the political spectrum, except, I have to say, the extreme right, because we always need to remember that parties at the extreme right never have protected the right of abortion. But when in all of the other political spectrum, you have such a support for this idea, you have to seize it. And so that's what we've done. So we've started this petition with the Planning Familial, and we gathered 180,000 signatures, basically under the idea saying, if you think that's so important, and if you think that what's happening in the US is so bad, just protect our right and put the abortion right into the Constitution. And this campaign has been really incredible and really amazing. And I think that what we've done there is not only like to kind of push our rights forward, but it's also been a way to show that there's still work to do and that we can accomplish it. We can win. And I think at the moment we feel we're losing a lot of time, but we can win stuff. And if we are well organized, if we are very strategic, and if we can use those crises and those opportunities, we can move further, closer to freedom and human rights for everyone.
One of my favorite books is speaking about like the fact that if we want to achieve something, we need to work for at least 10,000 hours on a certain situation. And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions about like organizing and changing stuff is that we think that if we will just post something or do like a couple of Instagram posts or like free interventions, that like we will move mountains, that like voice of like a famous person is enough, or that like a big press conference is enough. But like the secret is in a lot of work behind. So I think that like you didn't ever had the opportunity to speak a lot about like what were all the things that you did to gather those signatures. Like how did you fight for it, and like what was the secret behind the success? Because like I think one of your superpower is also like connecting people. So yeah, what is the story?
Yeah, I mean, I think the in that case specifically on the abortion freedom, I have to mention that we didn't get the abortion right. We got the abortion freedom, which is slightly different and slightly more protective for some people who analyze this constitution reform. But it's also the secret of that success is being able to say sometime it's better to have a small win and to move things a little bit further than to, like push away the idea of just, moving a little step further. But just going back to your question, I think the secret in that campaign, but generally speaking, is to really build coalitions. And when I talk about coalition is not just, with like top political leader or top NGOs. It's building coalition with the people. And by building coalition with the people is going, like door to door, step by step. And this door doesn't necessarily has to be, physical door. You can do that with digital work, but what you need to think about is who are the people who don't already agree with me? Who are the people? I mean, not necessarily who don't agree with me, but who don't have an opinion on the topic or who haven't been engaged. Maybe they're not like very politicized feminist activists, but what they care about is the idea of, being free and having the ability to determine how their life is going to be. And so I think that was really the secret of this campaign, is that while we had like a very strong political coalition, both like historical NGOs and associations on the right of abortion and women's rights, but also political leaders from all of the spectrum, we had a coalition of everyday people who signed that campaign, who signed that petition. And I think I thought about it a lot as I was drafting the petition and the campaign that I put online. Is it was not about, having like all of the, ticking all of the box of like the feminist, the feminist lexic. It was about talking about experience, talking about my own story as someone who had an abortion and how I felt, even living in France where this is a legal right, how I felt that I had to, like look for someone who would perform that abortion, because in France, people can refuse to perform abortion. So I remember like, trying two different doctors. I was lucky enough that I only had to look for two, because for some people it's even harder. But also that while I was in the room with that doctor, they had to hand over to me like this kind of leaflet where I should read about what, the danger of an abortion was, or, how I should consider it as a very important decision to make. And I had to wait 7 days before I was able to go back and actually get this abortion. And this also accounting like for the social pressure of doing that, how people feel, how people give you their opinion about what you should do and shouldn't do. And so I think that this campaign was successful because of my story being center in this petition, but not only mine. Like, I think it was very, very touching for me to look at the comments on the petition of people signing. Everyone talked about their experience, how it's been difficult for them, how this right holds for them so much, because it's about their body, it's about their story, it's about difficult moments, but it's also about joyful moments, because having the ability to abort is also a way to be freed from, a model of society that we shouldn't be, closed into. So I think like being able to go beyond your activist circle, your feminist circle, it's the only way to build a majority, and also it's the only way to connect with people. And I know you've done a lot of that work also, and that's why the Institute 8 of March is so effective, is that you're able to go and touch people's hearts. And of course, like we always need to have the politics behind our action, and we need to know where we go, and we need to have very strong legal basis to do that work. But when it comes to bring people together, we need to be much better at appealing to, their heart and their values and what's important for them.
Yes, I agree with this, and I also think that like so often when we need to get the like majority of people like to stand with us, like it's important to leave your ego out. Like I
Mm.
think that so often we need to work with people that we maybe personally don't like, or maybe we have problems with some of the approaches. But when it comes to a common cause, like we need to stand together. How do you
Mm.
manage to do this? Like how do you manage to see beyond the
Mm.
momentum and like focus on a big picture?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important topic for me. And to be honest, I'm writing another book about how in activism we are reproducing a lot of the things that we would criticize about, other type of actor like companies or political leaders. We're all in this for something, for a lot of us, we're in this because we care about certain rights and we care about certain issues because we're affected. And I think a part of it, being in activism is also finding your place in the world. It's finding your place in that fight. And it's okay, it's fine. We all, maybe we are in activism because it's a way for us to defend the cause, but also find friends. And it's also a way to find community. And that's beautiful. And that's what makes activism maybe a bit different. But it shouldn't be about trying to, solve our solve our ego, and also some of the hurt that we could have felt, sometimes they can get in the way of working together. So I think the way to overcome that, the way to be able to let go of that ego, is to wonder, why are those people important to the cause, and why should I be able to connect with them? And social change happen for two reasons. They happen because there are revolutionaries, and they also happen because there are people who are able to bridge the gap with that majority. So we need the radical activism. We need the individuals who will stand very firmly on some, kind of pushing the boundaries further. But we also need the people who are able to bridge the gap with the rest of society, including political leaders sometimes who are not there yet. And I think that it's really, really important that we do that together. In coalition work, it's not about agreeing on everything. It's not even about liking each other. It's about being able to understand where the power stands, where are what are the pockets of power that we can bring together and, we can aggregate so we are able to become even stronger. For me, organizing is really about that. It's to be able to say, this is where I'm going and this is the path forwards. And that can mean working with people you don't necessarily like, but do you agree on the basic value? Do you agree on like the basic rights that you're trying to defend? It's really important we're able to do that, because that's also, I think, one of the reasons why we're losing. We are sometimes, and I would say too often, driven by the hurt that we can feel about situations or history that we have, and we really need to make this step beyond to be able to build a very powerful movement.
And you're also like one of the most fun people that I know, like, and people who know how to like switch off and like how to just feel a lot of joy. What is this like secret of like finding joy in your fights, and like also taking a moment to breathe and to relax and to allow yourself just to be?
Well, I'm not very good at that, to be honest. I'm very good at advising people how to be like that, and I don't know how to do that. But I think, it's the case for a lot of activists. I read more and more, people who talk about self care and who talk about joyful activism, and I think that's really good. That's a conversation we are bringing, and I think we're all still very bad at it. But I think that for me, first of all, I mean, there are a few things. First of all, is decentering what's going on in my country. So I think that when we're able to say, okay, what's going on in France or what's going on in Slovenia is really bad, but let me de-zoom and let me realize that similar stuff are happening in different countries. First of all, you realize that it's not only about you as a group or as a country, but it's about, it's systemic. It's about it's not one story, it's like a system that functions. And so that also gives you the ability to see that if we were better at connecting, going back to the idea of coalition, the fights we have in France with the fight we have in Slovenia and others, we would be much more effective. So that gives me hope, is to be able to, like look beyond what's going on in my direct vicinity. And I'm just coming back from Georgia, and there are amazing group there who are really, really struggling with a very strong crackdown from government on freedom of association. And while I was there with them, of course, I could feel like, oh my God, this is horrible, what's happening to them. And I do think that's horrible. But I'm also seeing, okay, what happens to them has happened in Belarus and has happened in other places in the world. So it's always the same playbook. So we are able, actually, if we look at it, to prevent it and even to fight it when it's happening. So this is the first thing that gives me hope, decentering myself to see that we are not alone in that and we actually can build power. The other thing that brings me joy is to be is to be with people like you, which like I think it's important to surround ourselves with people who see activism as something that's necessary, but also something where we don't necessarily have to feel sad, and it can be fun, and it can be something that we decide to be fun. And I want to tell like some of the stories we have of being together, you and I, and even joking and even like laughing about the craziness of the situation we're in, and like how the world is completely falling apart. And I think like having able to have this irony is a way to give us like power to move forward. Last thing is dancing and karaoke, but this is a little bit easier to explain.
And I cannot wait to come to Paris on 1st of May to go out with you. But I wanted to speak about one more thing, and this is like, now we are here. Like, we need to collect this million of signatures. We are slowly approaching to first 10% of it. We are now on the fourth day of signature collection. There is still like, I think that personally, I didn't know how hard it will be and like how many things we will need to do. But like, why you personally think that this initiative is important, and why we both, even though we have like other jobs, like why we are both like sticking here and still like doing this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough, but honestly, I'm very hopeful. I think we're gonna do it. The reason why I think we're gonna do it is because we rely on organizations that have been building coalition, like doing ground organizing for quite some time. I think we were looking at numbers yesterday, and I was amazed to see, like in Slovenia, how fast you've reached you've reached those, your signature goal. So I think that we are able to do it because we have this network. The other thing we have to do, and I think that's why it's very important for everyone who's watching that or who's just involved in the campaign, is to go and find people really near you. Just to give you an example, of course, it's great if we have, these stars that will share the petition and, that will bring us like thousands of signatures at once. But I think the beauty of this campaign will also be to go and find the people near you. And I'm going back to what I was saying earlier. On the first day of the campaign, I sent a link of the ECI to my family group on WhatsApp. Everyone has a family group. And I was very, very, thoughtful to not only just send the link, but explain why this is important for me. And actually, my family doesn't necessarily, is not necessarily an activist, but they know that I care about it and they want to support me. And I think that all of them signed, including the guys. And often, like, the guys are the last one to get involved when I talk about feminism. So I want to say to them, like, well done. And so what I did is I sent the link, and then I was like, yeah, please, this is important, etc. And my family started to sign. And as every time one was saying, oh, I signed, I sent them a message like, yay. Then my sister was like, you should do a vocal every time we sign, not just like writing it. So I started to do a little vocal message at every signature. Yay, yay, yay. So what I want to say is that there are so many people around us that we can convince because they care about us, because maybe we share the same values. These are our family, these are our friends, these are our neighbors. And if we're all able to, take the time maybe every day of these coming 6 weeks to get, I don't know, the 5 people that you're going to come across or 6 people you're going to come across to sign and get them to do the same thing, we're going to reach those signatures very easily.
Yeah, I agree. And like the next step is like when we collect the signatures, if we collect the signatures, the next step is not something that we can totally rely on. Like the future of the proposal for like safe and accessible abortion throughout the Europe will be basically decided by the next European Parliament and also by the next European Commission. So my question for you is also like, yes, we need to sign the petition, we need to sign the ECI, we need to stand up for the cause. Why we need to go to the elections? Like even European ones, which are most of the time we have a feeling that they are maybe the most useless.
Yeah, and there's a reason why we feel they are useless, because we haven't been engaged in a right way into European policy making or into European politics. And that's a mistake we've made, because actually Europe is a very strong force for human rights and pushing human rights further. I often say, as you know, I work at Multitudes Foundation. We do some work on making politics more inclusive, and one of the thing I often say is that we think that politics is bad, and therefore we should stay away from it. And I did that for quite some time because I haven't been like actively engaged in institutional or party politics in my last years. But recently I realized that it's really important we get involved, because if we don't get involved, politics is never going to change. I like the image to say, like, imagine your room is very, very dirty, very dirty. And instead of getting in and cleaning up, you're actually like closing the door and waiting for this to, clean it itself. It's never going to work. So we need to get active in politics. We need to run for office. We need to vote. And I know that for so many people, it feels completely, completely out of the question because they've been disappointed by some political leader, etc. But the reality is everything that happens in our life is decided by people sitting in those rooms. And therefore, what do we do about it? Do we do nothing? Or do we go and push for the person or the people in general who are the closest to our value? Do we go and vote, on the 9th of June, like we really have to go because there's a big danger coming up. There's a risk that the extreme right, the European extreme right, is going to get a lot of seats. And when they get a lot of seats, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to, crack down on rights of abortion. They're going to crack down on freedom and dignity for migrants people. They are already starting to push a horrible narrative against trans people. And so we have a responsibility to be there. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, but this is the way to starting cleaning the room, and we have to show up, and we have to show that we care, and we have to show that we have political power, because therefore political leaders will align with our demands.
Another thing which I wanted to ask you, and it is one of last questions, is like there are cycles in every single campaign. Sometimes you have a feeling that everything is perfect, and then like you just want to hide and cry, and you have a feeling that everything goes wrong. And for me, like there is a lot of people who decide to step back, and I think it's a totally like legitimate option, like that you decide in one moment that you did enough and that you like don't want to fight anymore, but you keep fighting, like you keep showing up for years now. Like what is your reason that you're doing this? Like why you keep fighting?
Um, First of all, I keep fighting, but I think I fight in a different way. I'm going to be 40 years old, so in a month, and I'm starting to be tired. I'm starting to be tired to fight by responding. Responding to attacks, responding to threats, responding to stuff that have been strategized and organized for years. And so I think that the way I want to keep fighting is by being a little bit more proactive, not just reactive to the attack on our rights and freedom. And so that's why I keep doing, and that's why I think it's very important to get engaged in more political work. I'm not running myself. I'm not part of a party, but we need to get, excuse my French, but our shit together, because in the European Union, but in every single country across the globe, what's happening is not decided by people who take power by force. It's decided by people who are elected. So I think that I keep fighting in a different way, but I keep fighting because I don't think what else I can do. I don't think what else we can do. I have to say that I often wonder why I was doing that, why I'm an activist. I even started asking people around me, like, why are you an activist? Or people who don't, my cousin, for example, I did a podcast interview with her, and I was like, why are you not engaged? And she was like, well, I think, that's the status quo. And I think my role as a mother to my child is to help them navigate this world that is not a great world. And I think the difference of vision that I have with my cousin is that I don't want to keep status quo and just raise any kids or anyone in a world where you have to actually struggle for dignity and life. I want things to be different, and I don't see myself doing anything else, because I don't see why we would be here on this planet if it's not to try and make the world a better place, basically.
Yeah. If you can invite people to sign the ECI, like really shortly, what you would say to them?
I would say that, first of all, it takes 30 seconds, so it's not complicated. It's very fast. The second thing I want to say is it's just the beginning of a beautiful story of, people, friends, activists coming together to do something great, to do something beautiful and fun, and that you don't want to miss out. So take 30 seconds today to embark on this really fun stuff we're building together.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for like everything that you're doing. I always say that you're one of the people that taught me the most, and I cannot wait to see what we will do like in 10 years, like together, and what kind of actions we will take.
Thank you, Nika. Same for me.
So
Thank you.
that's it for today. Sign the initiative, and we will talk next time. I think with someone from US at that
Amazing. Cool. Thank you, Nika.